Okay, let's go to Africa. All right, so let's take a look at North Africa, and what we can kind of go ahead and do then is on your name 5 charts, why don't we just flip over to Africa, okay, and think about some stuff that maybe we can put on there as far as North Africa goes. All right, I'm just going to go, for the sake of space here, I'm just going to go ahead and erase this is kind of like our Middle East foundation of Islam stuff. Remember, we're working off one of our 4 M themes. We're working off the Muslim theme here still. All right, but let's go to North Africa. Let's put some stuff. Obviously, as far as Africa goes, the first place in Africa that it's going to spread to, just think geographically and kind of have your map out here. Obviously, what spot geographically in Africa is Islam going to spread to first? Yeah, so we're going to talk about, trade route wise. We're going to talk like more or less into the spread. Why don't we just put down spread of Islam into North Africa? Okay. So you take a look at North Africa. That's the first place where Islam is obviously going to it's obviously going to spread into. Okay. What's going to be our characteristic? They'll throw questions at you, something like this before, where they'll say, in the 800s, 900s or so, Islam into North Africa. What's going to be the primary vehicle or the primary method by which it's going to spread into places like North Africa? I know it's going to be trade, but how can we kind of describe that maybe even further? All right, so we're going to be talking about particular type of trade routes here. So here's where we want to introduce certain types of trade routes that are going to be a big part of the deal. So I want you guys to put this one down for Africa. Let's talk about this thing called the Trans-Saharan trade routes. Okay? Trans-Saharan trade routes. Now, it's not just going to be the story of Islam, but there's going to be some other characteristics we probably want to know about these trade routes as well, things that are happening and things that kind of exist. Aside from Islam, what else, if we talk about the Trans-Saharan trade routes, what other type of products are going to be spread around the Trans-Saharan trade routes? Yeah, Dylan?
Ivory.
All right, ivory is going to be big, right? Think about the tusks of elephants. What else? Gold is going to be huge. Ivory, gold. Anything else? Yeah. Salt, absolutely. Ivory, gold, salt, and I think that maybe the last one we put on the list was like textiles, I want to say, as like the 4 things. What I want to do is we kind of like come across these things as we move forward. What I'm going to do is I kind of bounced back, and I don't need you guys necessarily to be putting everything down. I'm not putting everything up and replaying notes on there so you can get every single note down. You guys have these things down from before, but what I like to do is when we go through something is to sometimes pop something on the board that we would have discussed in class and that we've kind of gone over before in class, and just so you can kind of see it and recognize it and sort of do what you can as far as kind of jogging that part of your brain or kind of that part of your memory where you're kind of in this part. Well, this is basically chapter, I want to say this was chapter 15 as a matter of fact. And when you talk about the Trans-Saharan trade routes, a couple of things you're going to have to know about North Africa is the type of products, obviously, that are spread into North Africa, and what the impact of that, obviously, is. So let's just take a look at something. This was, whoever's in 5th hour, you guys did this one from 5th hour, that's where I pulled this one from. You guys remember talking about this big map of Africa here? And some of the early stuff, maybe what we'll go ahead and do actually is, let's make that go down a little bit, as easily as possible. Let's flip on over here to kind of West Africa. You guys remember putting this big map of Africa together? And we had really kind of like launched this out under the whole understanding that this is the point in time when people start to pass the Sahara Desert for the first time. And what I wanted you guys to kind of understand about the Sahara Desert when we talked about this is sort of treat the Sahara Desert like you would treat an ocean. Okay? Remember, you can't pass an ocean, you can't cross an ocean without a particular type of technology. We said the same thing for the Sahara Desert, right? You can't cross the Sahara Desert without a type of technology. What was that technology we said? You have to have camels. You have to have something that's going to be able to help you across there. So, because you got camels, we have people, and we have the ability basically to utilize this as a trade route, and that's going to be an important, significant part here as we come across. All right. The places in West Africa, the places that we are talking about, 2 particular empires. One of them, and we could probably go ahead and put this on our name 5 charts as well for Africa, is why don't we put down the 2 particular empires that kind of cross and get us to the other side of the Trans-Saharan trade routes. Let's talk about Ghana, and what's the other one along with Ghana? Mali. Very good. Ghana and Mali. Okay? Now, when we say Ghana and Mali, and we put these 2 together, couple things should hopefully kind of come to mind, okay? When it comes to Ghana and Mali, what we can kind of maybe put along with these 2 is let's put down a couple of those products that are going to be very significant. You guys put these down just a second ago. The ivory, the gold, the salts, and the slaves are going to be huge. So like you wouldn't cross the whole trans-Saharan trade route. You wouldn't go, or you wouldn't cross the entire Sahara Desert unless something really good was on the other side, right? Something very valuable, something very good. Yes, sir.
Which one exported more gold, Ghana or Mali?
It's kind of a. I mean, usually you kind of classify Ghana as being the gold coast. You always think Ghana, the G for gold.
Yeah.
But the only thing is with Mali is bigger. It encompassed a bigger area. So in that sense, we probably have to give the credit to them. But they're both, they're both pretty close in that sense. All right, it's the gold, it's the ivory, it's the slaves, etc. Ghana comes first, just so you understand. Ghana's smaller. Ghana comes first. They're back in like the early 600s or so. Like we said, they're a big stop along the trans-Saharan trade routes in West Africa. The other big thing that we basically want to say about West Africa is that with Ghana and Mali, these are going to be the two empires that are there when basically Islam arrives. Okay, so let's put something on there as well. And the big question you're going to get, and they love asking multiple choice questions like this. They love asking questions about what was like the impact of the trans-Saharan trade routes. Why do we care about the trans-Saharan trade routes into Ghana and Mali and stuff like that? Is that because more than anything else, we have to understand is that people were coming there for trade purposes, people were coming there to acquire these products, but also when they come there, Islam gets spread along it as well. Okay, so Islamic merchants crossing these trade routes, trading the gold, ivory, slaves, etc., they're going to bring their religion to these people. Okay? Who did we say in the past usually the first people to convert? Like when it comes to Ghana, when Islam comes to Ghana, when it comes to Mali, who are our first people who usually pick up? I mean, obviously the merchants, right? That's part of it, but then beyond the merchants, who are maybe the first people to do it? The upper classes, right? The upper classes and the elites, because what usually missionaries find is that you convert the upper classes first. That has a way of kind of, propelling itself to folks underneath them as well. So those are going to be the big guys. Okay. So what else do we have here? We had Ghana. We had talked about Mali, as we had said. Mali is very much similar to the Ghana Empire, as you saw on the map right there. It's just a little bit bigger. Mali's a little bit later. Okay, Mali's in like the 1200s or so. As far as like important locations, important cities, and we'll probably put some of these things down. I don't need to necessarily put this on the name 5 chart because we'll kind of save this for a little bit later. But do you guys remember talking about some of the important cities like Timbuktu becomes the really significant trading center in West Africa, another city called Jenne, another city called Gao. That are all kind of significant parts here as part of West Africa. Okay, so that's kind of a good place to sort of start. I think the last just couple things about Africa, maybe that we can kind of throw on here as well, is why don't we put, besides Ghana and Mali, let's go down into Central Africa here. And I know this doesn't have as much to do with Islam, obviously, but let's go through the other kingdom in Central Africa onto our list here as well, which is going to be Congo. And actually, as a matter of fact, you can either put this as a new one, or if you even want to, you can put it with your other empires that you put. So if you have Ghana, Mali, you can go ahead and put Congo on there as well. We understand Congo isn't really on the trans-Saharan trade routes, more Central Africa, as we had kind of said, and that's a significant part. Okay, let's also just kind of keep in mind, I don't need you to put these on the charts, but guys, let's just kind of keep in mind the Bantu-speaking people. Remember talking about them? Bantu speakers are those ones that kind of populate much of Central Africa, and they're based on agriculture, they're based on kinship groups, but also their language is the thing that's kind of the unifying thing for them. All right, remember on the very side, what did we draw on the side of Africa over here? Madagascar. Do you guys remember what the impact of Madagascar was and why that was kind of an important place? Something was coming to Madagascar from other places.
Silk.
Some cases it might be silk from China. There's probably other products though too.
Spices.
Spices from where?
Asia.
From Asia. All right, so from the rest of the Asian world here, from India, from Southeast Asia, you get spices from over there. And then there's one type of food that's coming from Southeast Asia as well, that does a really, really great job of kind of like increasing people's diet, making people's diets a lot better. Bananas. Very good. Remember the banana story? All right, so those are the ones. The other stuff we had said was chickens, by the way. Chickens, language, and bananas, basically, all coming into Madagascar. And they're all coming from these people. Let's not forget about these guys. But these, what are called Austronesian people, okay, of the far kind of Southeast Asian regions, island regions out here, who are going to bring these products into Madagascar. That's going to work its way into Africa. Has a great effect. Obviously, what type of effect is this going to have on population then? It's going to go up. You can bring in chickens, you can bring in bananas. People's diets are going to get better. They're going to live longer. They're going to pass on. They're obviously going to be able to have more kids, and populations go up. So those are some of the impacts as far as from the outside world we'll talk about as well. All right, last couple things with Africa. Let's go back to Ghana and Mali real quick. And we can put down maybe one. You got any room there on the bottom still? Try to make a little bit of room. Mine actually kind of ran off the bottom a little bit because I had a couple extra things to put. Yes, ma'am?
So what kind of questions would they ask about either Bantu or Austronesian?
You know, Bantu will be a very broad, probably easy question. The Bantu question is just that, you know, starting as long ago as 2000 BCE, Bantu-speaking people are the ones who basically just populate sub-Saharan Africa. And they all kind of spread out and they kind of go into different little regions and stuff like that. But the thing that you can kind of like, the way that you can take a person back and find out if they're a Bantu-speaking person is that their language is going to have like subtle similarities with other Bantu-speaking people. That's about it. Okay, just know that Bantus kind of populate sub-Saharan Africa. And then Austronesians, just that Austronesians are great traders and great merchants of kind of Southeast Asia, and they bring products into Africa like bananas and like chickens. Okay? All right, if we got a little bit of room, like I said, mine kind of runs over just a little bit, but on the very bottom, can we put down the names of like two very important people? And let's go back to West Africa here. Let's go back to these groups of Ghana and Mali. And as we had said, this is kind of like the spots for two of them. But as far as Ghana and Mali goes, can we put down the names of a couple people that are going to be very, very significant individuals in Africa? All right? This one particular individual is going to be a leader in the Mali Empire, and he's going to do something very important as far as like bringing Islam into Mali. Anybody know who it is? Say it again. Mansa Musa.
Oh, I knew that one.
Remember this guy?
Yeah.
All right, Mansa Musa. All right, what do you guys remember about Mansa Musa?
Did he like throw gold?
He threw gold at people, right? Exactly. He's the guy that throws the gold. The reason why he throws the gold, where is
That was his first pilgrimage, wasn't it? Or
He
not
is-
pilgrimage or whatever.
He
Hajj to
is.
Mecca.
He is the guy that's, when he takes his Hajj to Mecca, remember he's the guy that makes the journey to Mecca. Everybody has to do the Hajj once in a lifetime. He makes the Hajj, but on the way there, he is so rich, leader of the Mali Empire, that he throws gold out of people. Remember they talked about how the price of gold actually went down? Inflation went up so much in places like Egypt because he just flooded the market with gold so much. Throws the gold at people. People get really, really amazed and shocked that, like, you know, who is this guy? He kind of came out of nowhere. Goes to Mecca, does the Hajj, and then the important part is what happens when he comes back. When he comes back across the trans-Saharan trade routes, he's now filled with like Islamic fervor. He's filled with like the passion of the faith and stuff like that. And what does he do when he comes back? He builds all sorts of stuff. Oh, we'll get to Ibn Battuta in a second. But the stuff that he does, and you can see this all across West Africa, is he starts to build mosques and schools. And the one way you kind of see as the calling card of this is if you see these mosques that are made out of mud across West Africa, these are ones that were like made during this time frame. A lot of them made by Mansa Musa here because he's so like enamored about Islam now. Yeah.
I was like watching National Geographic.
Good for you.
Like, well, I wasn't watching. My dad was. And I came downstairs this morning and they were talking about that. Like
They're talking about this?
Yeah, they're talking about like a mosque that they were like putting mud on from like a river or something. And they said like they had to do it like every year or something.
Yeah, a lot of upkeep that it obviously
Yeah,
takes,
it
right?
was ridiculous. I was like, you're making it out of mud?
Well, if you think about it, you're building this in the middle of West Africa. You know, are you going to be building it out of, you know, trees? You know, you're going to build it out of wood and stuff. You know, there's not exactly heavy forests and stuff like that all over the place. So, yeah, you build it with products and you build it with what you have. And it obviously, you're right, it takes a ton of upkeep. But the really important thing to kind of think about for Mansa Musa and our journeys across the Sahara like that, but the important thing to think about with him is he is very, very key in kind of like, you know, energizing people, getting people really, really intensely like into Islam basically in West Africa. So that's Mansa Musa. He promotes Islam, he builds mosques, he builds schools, he makes Islam huge. All right, the last person to put on there besides Mansa Musa is let's also put down the name Ibn Battuta. All right, Ibn Battuta is going to be an important African individual as well here. Here's our friend Ibn Battuta. Do we remember what Ibn Battuta does?
No.
Yes, no. Do you remember, John?
Didn't he like go around to a bunch of different cities in Africa and like tell them the proper way to, I don't know.
Is that the one with the woman?
To
Do Islam.
do Islam, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So he's the guy. If you remember Ibn Battuta, he's the. This is going to get into the concept of this whole unit. By the way, we're going to have a few people that we're going to kind of label on our reviews as being the travelers of this time frame. There's a lot of very important travelers. There's Ibn Battuta as a traveler. Remember a very important European traveler at this time? Played the game in the pool. You know this guy. Marco Polo. All right. So we're also going to talk about Zheng He, the really famous Chinese traveler. There's lots of famous travelers at this time. Ibn Battuta is going to be kind of at the top of the list, though, as far as Islam is concerned, all right? What we said about Ibn Battuta, if you remember him, he's in the 1300s. Wasn't Ibn Battuta a dates quiz date of ours, the Travels of Ibn Battuta? Wasn't it a time frame one? Was it like 13... Or was it just 1330 is all we had to say for that particular one? Okay. In reality, he goes from 1325 all the way up to 1354. Ibn Battuta travels all the way around, not only the Islamic world, but he goes to China, he goes to India, he goes into parts of Europe. And remember, the big thing for Ibn Battuta, he travels around and he preaches to people the proper way to practice Islam. And yeah, you're right. He's the guy that, like, he gets shocked when he goes into, like, African villages and the women aren't covering themselves. And he's, like, throwing drapes over them and stuff like that to, like, try to get them to be proper. What does this kind of tell us, though? Now, all right, so think about it. It's 1300. It's what, 700 years after Islam is founded here? What has happened to the Islamic faith 700 years after it's been founded? It's evolved. It's starting to change, right? People are practicing slightly different ways of doing it, and some more traditionalists are having a hard time with that, right? And they're trying to sometimes hold on to this. Now, he's still very significant, obviously, in the sense that he promotes a particular brand of Islam. He does what he can, obviously, to promote that. And just like we said, he plays this big role, obviously, in its spread. So, you may have any questions there? Ibn Battuta, the spread, the travels. All right, he's going to be one of our famous world travelers. I think we'd also show this map as well. Told us all the different things. He maps places. He spreads it around like crazy. Okay, let's go someplace else then. So we just did Africa. Just did Africa.